Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. Tonight, let's go back to the 16th century and explore one of the most fascinating figures in English royal history. This woman was Queen of England, but only for a brief time, just over a full week. She would eventually be killed by her cousin, the infamous Bloody Mary, Queen of England during the 1500s. Let's explore the story of Lady Jane Grey, the 9-day Queen of England. Jane Grey was born into the nobility during the Tudor dynasty of England in the 16th century. She was the Protestant cousin of King Edward VI, the young son of Henry VIII, who took the throne as a 10-year-old boy after his father's death. Under Edward, Protestants were free to teach the Bible and the biblical doctrine of justification by faith alone. Now, remember the significance of this for just one second. Martin Luther had only kick-started the Reformation a generation earlier in 1517, so much of Europe was in an uproar as Protestants and Catholics began jockeying for power. Now, back to England, young Edward was very ill, and he died at the tender age of 15, after having ruled England as a boy for only 5 years. Before his death, he pronounced his Protestant cousin, Lady Jane Grey, as the new monarch of England over his half-sister Mary, who was a staunch Roman Catholic. Jane was 15 years old when she took the throne, and she was faithful to the scripture and faithful as a ruler. Many people, including her own family members, turned on her during her reign, but she did not respond in kind. She pushed for the same Protestant policies as her cousin Edward had, yet her rule was very brief. The country quickly abandoned her and threw its support behind Mary. Jane was deposed after only 9 days and imprisoned in the Tower of London. Several months later, in February of 1554, Jane was executed by Bloody Mary, who, as history tells us, would go on to execute almost 300 Protestant Christians, many of whom were pastors, in her furious attempt to return England to Roman Catholic dominance. Young Jane is remembered as a heroine of the Reformation in England and as an example of godliness and steadfastness in the midst of great oppression. She was beheaded on February 12, 1554, at the age of 16. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.